Hey everyone, so we're back for the second time in 2 days. This time we're going to be breaking down the Australia card, UFC Fight Night 142. Just to give you a reminder, you can find me on Twitter at Pro MMA Betting. The website is prommmabetting.com. Subscription packages are available on there for MMA and boxing tips. We offer weekly, monthly, 6 monthly and annual subscriptions for the tips. You'll get an email or emails every week, kind of as we discover tips. We'll give you a breakdown on the email as to what to bet. All of our bets are third party tracked. We use betmma.tips for our MMA bets, and we use betting.gs for boxing bets, and also if we combine MMA and boxing bets. You can find the links to the third-party tracking websites on our website, so please have a look there. We've been very successful betting on the two sports. We've built a six-figure bankroll from nothing. So if you want to find out what our tips are, give our subscription service a go, even if it's just for a week or a month, just to trial the service, see what you think. But we're now going to move on to the Australia card, and we're going to break down the fights, starting from the very first fight of the night. I'm not sure if the official fight order's been released yet, but I'm going to go off I was going to go off the UFC website, but they don't even have the Damir Ismagulov fight listed, so I'm just going to go through the order that's on Wikipedia at the moment. So we'll do the first fight as Damir Ismagulov versus Alex Georges. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. There's a fair bit of tape available on Damir. He's been fighting on the M1 circuit over in Russia, so you know this guy's going to be pretty good. He's from Kazakhstan. He's pretty young, 27 years of age. He's been fighting in M1 for the last most of his career, really. Had his fifth, sixth pro fight in M1. Been pretty much with them since. Looking at the records of the guys he's beaten, he's fought some pretty decent guys, so this guy's going to be pretty good. I watched some tape on him. He's quite he's dangerous on the feet. He's fairly raw. It goes for a lot of high risk stuff. He throws spinning kicks, flying knees, but very explosive, very dangerous. He's got good wrestling as well, decent takedowns. He's got good top control. He looks like a pretty well-rounded fighter, and he could be a fairly dangerous threat to this lightweight division in the UFC. Judging on some of the performances we've seen, it's going to be really interesting to see how he looks in the UFC. As I said on the pod I did yesterday, a lot of these guys that come from some of these smaller shows, and then one's not a small show, it's a big show in Russia. A lot of them excel when they come into the UFC and look even better, and I've got a feeling that this guy's going to be one of them that comes into the UFC and really impresses. I do like his body of work so far. He was scheduled to fight Joe Duffy. That would have been a really good fight, because I hold Joe Duffy in really high esteem. But instead he's facing an Australian opponent who's been drafted in on very short notice, I think about a week's notice. Alex is unbeaten, he's 7-0, but from looking at the tape, he's pretty raw. He comes from the Mokhtarian camp. I think the two brothers are his trainers. I had a look at as many fights as I could of his. There are a few available on tape. He's only been a pro for just over 2 years. I managed to find his first fight against Sammy Croke, where he won due to an eye poke. I mean, it was his professional debut, so I don't want to read too much into it, but it was a pretty competitive fight against Sammy Croke, who was making his professional debut and hasn't fought since. I also managed to find his fight against Steve Kopecki, where he won in the first round KO. The guy was overmatched, 1-2 record. His fight with Bradney is available as well. A bit of a comical fight, really. And I managed to find highlights of his last fight against Raphael Scott. He looks fairly dangerous on the feet, but he looks very green. holds his chin very high. He's quite tall for a lightweight. He's 6'2", so looks like he's got that tall man defence. He's very cocky. Whether he's going to be as cocky in the UFC against this beast from Kazakhstan he's facing, I doubt it. I'd like to think he's not as cocky because he's going to get knocked out if he is. But yeah, he's really raw. As I said, 7 fights. He's fought really poor competition. This is a huge step up in competition for him. He's in on a week's notice. I mean, he is fighting in his backyard. Damir's had the long flight over from Russia, but looking at his Instagram, looks like he arrived about a week ago, Damir. I just see this being a bit of a one-sided beatdown. Damir, if things are difficult on the feet, because that's where Alex's strength is, Damir can take this fight to the floor, can use his wrestling, can use his good top control, ground and pound, snatch a submission. I see Alex getting put away in the first round here. I think he's really overmatched. I think they've just drafted someone in with an unbeaten record on short notice just so Damir gets that debut fight in the UFC, and he can start to make strides through that middleweight division. So I'm going to go Damir via, inside the distance, submission or TKO inside 1 or 2 rounds here. I think this is a bit of a mismatch. The betting line is Damir's basically minus 500 now, so he's heavily favoured. From looking at the tape that's available, I can't disagree with that line. I think it's a pretty accurate line. So Damir inside the distance against an overmatched, raw Alex, making a huge step up in competition on a week's notice. So Damir inside the distance. If we move on to the next fight, we have Mizuto Hirota against Christos Giagos. Hirota's he's a very tough guy. He's never been stopped, I don't think, in his whole career. He's had 1 submission lost, but never been KO'd. This is most likely going to be a stand-up fight. So his fight against Ross Pearson, he did look a bit old, Mizuto, in that fight. He is 37 now. Ross is shot, let's be honest. And Ross did win that fight. I think did it go to a split? I don't think it did it? No, it was unanimous, but it was a close fight. But I can't see Mizuto having... Well, it's Christos Giagos, so this could be a competitive fight. Hirota's tough. He's got decent stand-up. As I said, he's never been KO'd. If you look at his second run in the UFC, he had the fight with Ishihara where Ishihara absolutely battered him, was just lighting him up, dropped him a few times. Ishihara ran out of gas, and the fight ended up finishing as a draw with Hirota finishing really strong. He then beat a Cole Miller, who I don't think really wanted to be in there at the end of his career. He used takedowns in that fight to win that fight pretty much, and then he fought Volkanovski. Volkanovski's a tough fight for anyone, and last fight against Ross Pearson. But if you're losing to Ross at this stage of Ross's career, then I think the end of your UFC career is nigh as well. So he's coming in here against Christos Giagos. Christos is a decent fighter. I actually bet on Charles Oliveira when they faced back in September. I thought that was a terrible stylistic fight for him. This one's much more favourable. Hirota, he might try and mix in some takedowns. I don't think he's going to have too much joy. I think predominantly we're looking at this being on the feet. Like Hirota, this is Giagos' second stint in the UFC. He didn't fare too well first time around. He left, he went to ACB. He got some good wins in ACB against some tough guys. He's got decent stand-up, Giagos, but nothing really stands out for me with regards to him as a fighter. I remember his fight with Josh Emmett. That was post his first UFC run. Emmett dropped him multiple times and finished him in the 3rd round. But then, as I said, he's gone to ACB. He's looked good there. He's dangerous on the feet. He's got some power. Hirota, as we've already said, is a tough guy. So this is going to be an interesting fight. I just think Giagos is probably a bit too young, a bit too fresh. He's got less mileage on him. I think he's probably going to eke out a decision here. I think the betting line is really off though. Giagos is minus 365. There's no way I'm going to bet Christos Giagos as a minus 365 favourite here. If you look at his UFC record, he's had 1, 2, 3. He's 3-4 in the UFC, so there's no way. I just can't justify how he's such a big favourite here. People were obviously fading Hirota coming off the Ross Pearson loss, but I can see this being a fairly close fight. But as I said, I do think Giagos is going to have too much for him. He's the younger, fresher fighter. If we look at significant strikes landed, Hirota's 3.66, Giagos is down at 2.16. Is that a reflection on style matches though that Giagos has had? Possibly, because he has faced, Charles Oliveira, who took him down and subbed him. Although a lot of that fight was standing and he was getting outstruck, but Giagos would have been fearful of the takedown, so he couldn't perform at his natural state on the feet. Chris Wade would have wrestled him. Gilbert Burns would have taken him down and tried to grapple him. So maybe that's not a true reflection. He's not maybe had the correct stylistic fight thus far in his UFC career to really show off his stand-up. But he is going to get it here. This is, besides the victory he has in the UFC over Jorge de Oliveira, this is his best stylistic matchup so far, because Hirota is going to give him the fight that he wants. It is going to be contested on the feet, I think, and I think Giagos will come away with the victory. But there's no way in hell I would touch that betting line as it currently stands. I think it's going to be a competitive fight. I think it will go to 3 rounds, and I wouldn't be surprised if Hirota takes a round off of him and maybe we have a close final round. As I said, Hirota's a tough guy. He's not going to stop coming. So, yeah, interesting fight. Giagos needs to win this, otherwise he's he is going to get cut again and he's never going to get back in the UFC. Hirota's probably going to get cut if he loses, so it's probably a UFC ending match for one of these two. So both of them really need the victory, but I'm going to side with Giagos here to pull this one off and take the victory back to America. Elias Garcia, Kai Kara France, the next fight we have up at the bantamweight division. We saw Elias Garcia make his debut in the UFC back in July against Mark De La Rosa. It wasn't a great debut performance. He's a cousin of the Pettis brothers, so he's kind of got that flair with the stand-up that we saw. Throws a lot of kicks. He is a flyweight though. This fight's at 135. He is a small guy for the bantamweight division. He's really early in his career as well. I don't like some of these guys that have like 6 pro fights against very mediocre competition and then take the call up from the UFC. I don't think he's ready for it yet. So he's coming in here on short notice as well. He's got flown away to Australia, and he's fighting Kai Kara France, who there's no tape on Kai in the last 2 years, which is interesting. The last tape available for him is when he fought WADA in Rizin, literally 2 years ago. He lost that fight. He lost a decision. He actually got hurt with calf kicks very early in that fight, so it's hard to glean too much information from that fight because he was compromised very early on. For the rest of the fight, he could barely stand. He was having to switch stance. He wasn't comfortable fighting from the southpaw stance, so it's a bit of a weird fight to read too much into. He did drop WADA at one point when he was basically on one leg. He definitely has big power, Kai. I did watch his run on Tough, which was just prior to the WADA fight. He absolutely destroyed the guy he fought in the first round on Tough. He has big power, literally tore the guy apart. He then fought Pantoja. We all know how good Pantoja is, and he gave Pantoja a really good fight. He defended the takedowns well. Pantoja was trying to get to his back when they were standing against the cage. He fended him off really well. It was a really good performance. I really thought highly of Kai after watching that fight. The stand-up was pretty competitive. He just seemed to get out volume towards the end of the fight. He slowed down a little bit, but it was a really solid performance. He looked solid on the feet, and as I said, good defensive grappling. I did really like that performance. He's training at a really good gym over in New Zealand. He's at Israel Adesanya's gym, which also has Dan Hooker and Shane Young, two fighters that are a weight class above him, but he's got excellent training partners there. I can only imagine that in the last 2 years he has made some significant improvements. We're making an assumption there, which I don't like doing, but with the camp he's got, the young guy he is, the skills he did have before, the power he's got for someone that fights at bantamweight, I can envisage big things for Kai. A fight I would love to see would be Kai against Nathaniel Wood. Let's see how Kai does this weekend, but I think a fight with Nathaniel Wood would be a really, really exciting fight. But let's see how this weekend goes. As I said, we've not seen him in a couple of years, so let's see if he's made those strides that I'm hopeful that he has. These two are both the same height. I'm not sure what Kai's reach is. It's not listed anywhere, but it's definitely a fight that I can see being contested on the feet. I think Kai's too big for him. I think Elias will struggle to get him down. I think it will be an interesting fight in round one, but I think Kai's power's going to come to bear, and I think he's going to be too much for Garcia. As I said earlier, he's on 1 week's notice, so it's not great for Garcia, this fight. So I'm definitely going to go with Kai. I can see him putting his power to good use and securing a knockout here and making an impressive debut in the UFC, and I'm looking forward to seeing how his career progresses. Next, Keito Nakamura against Salim Touahri. And I did find Kai's reach. He's at a 1 inch reach disadvantage, so makes no difference to the fight really. It's ineligible, so I'm not worried about the 1 inch reach disadvantage. But back to Keito Nakamura versus Salim Touahri. Nakamura is a tough guy. We've seen him in numerous UFC fights now. He took a absolute beating against Jinglang Wei for first round he actually won, but second round and first half of the third round he took a really bad beatdown, but he came back and secured the choke and pulled a miraculous victory out of the bag. He then fought Tom Breese. The size difference looked comical. Breese was a huge favourite, but it was a really competitive fight. It was pretty close. I remember when it went to the scorecards, I do think Breese deserved a nod, but I was expecting maybe a split decision, or even I wouldn't have been shocked if Nakamura was awarded the fight. Carl Noki beat, just broke him with pressure. He had a great fight with Zaleski dos Santos, really entertaining fight. Alex Morono, it was an okay fight, back and forth, and then Tony Martin, or Anthony Rocco Martin as he's now known as, he showed poor fight IQ in that fight. He chose to stand with Martin when, I don't know why he wasn't going for takedowns. When he did, he managed to secure the takedowns. I'm just not too sure what he was thinking in that fight. The knock on Nakamura is he's had over 40 fights now. He's 34 years of age. He has received a lot of damage, so there is mileage on the clock there. He's got a closer to home fight here as opposed to having to fly to America, so that will suit him. But yeah, he's a really well-rounded guy. I like him, really tough guy. He's got really good grappling. His stand-up's okay, and he's tough as they come. Salim Touahri we saw take a short notice fight against Warley Alves in his UFC debut. He's done his camp at American Top Team, so it's going to be interesting to see if there's any changes been made since that fight with Warley over a year ago. I remember when I done tape on him prior to fighting Warley, I don't think there was a great deal of tape available. I found the Matt Inman fight, who's a British fighter who he took out with a lovely body shot. I found a fight where he was knocked out as well. We're going back 5 years, but if you have a chance to look at it, watch it. It's one of the most brutal knockouts you'll ever see. It was knocked completely out cold. But he gave Worley a fairly competitive fight. It was close-ish, but Worley did win a fairly comfortable decision. But as I said, it was really short notice. So this is a hard fight to call, because I am wondering where Keita is at with regards to the damage he's taken, how many fights he's had, his age, and I wouldn't be shocked if Salim can pull this out of the bag here. Keita is a favourite, and rightly so, but something's telling me Salim might be able to make a go of this. The guy's got power. We know Keita's tough, but Salim definitely has power. How's Keita going to fight? Is he going to go for takedowns, or is he going to be content to stand again? So Salim being the younger, fresher guy, I like that he's gone out to American Top Team to do his camp. I'm not underestimating Keita, because it's something that we tend to do, but he is a very good fighter. But I think I'm gonna go for Salim here to pull this out the bag. I think he can use the power he has on the feet, use his defensive grappling. I remember Worley had a fairly difficult time trying to take him down. I think Keita may struggle to get him down. Salim looks like he's quite physically strong, and as I said, he doesn't tend to go for takedowns too much, Keita, so I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing this as a stand-up fight. Keita's got a 1-inch reach advantage, so negligible. Height is pretty similar. Keita's significant strikes 2.21, so he's not got the highest volume going, and he can eat strikes as well. He's 55% takedown accuracy, so when he goes for takedowns he does land them, but he just doesn't go for them enough, especially in that Tony Martin fight. I just don't think he fought smart at all. So yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to go for Salim. Even though we haven't seen a great deal of him, except for the Worley fight, and there's some of his regional fights available. Strong, powerful guy, American Top Team. I'm going to go for him to pull the victory out of the bag. I think Keita may be starting to fade a little bit, and I think Salim can win a decision here. But it's a tough fight to bet on. Keita is the favourite, but it's, as I say, it's a difficult one to have full insight on, because I'm not quite sure of Salim's full capability. So it's a bit of a hunch more than something that we can take from tape, but I'm going to side with Salim here. Next up we have Wilson Hayes against Ben 10, very much a grappler versus striker matchup. Wilson Hayes trains out of Alliance, so comes from a very solid camp. He's coming off 3 defeats in a row. He's had 3 very tough fights consecutively. He fought Demetrius Johnson, was a gradual beatdown until he got submitted in round 3. Henry Cejudo absolutely outclassed him, knocked him out in the second round, and then he had a very back and forth competitive fight with John Moraga, where he managed to take Moraga down multiple times, but Moraga kept getting back to his feet, and he ultimately lost the decision. So 3 losses in a row. Is Hayes starting to fade? He is a flyweight fighter, as we discussed yesterday. Reflexes do start to go as you age, and they're so important at the lower weight classes. He is 33 now, so he may be going that route. Ben 10 is an excellent striker, really nice crisp striking. If he can keep the fight on the feet, Wilson Hayes is in trouble. Ben 10 fought Formiga last time. I'd say Formiga is a better version of Wilson Hayes. Formiga did manage to get him down. He did actually manage to get back to his feet on a couple of occasions, Ben, and he ultimately got dropped with a massive spinning back fist and then ultimately choked out, but he was basically out of it on the floor, so he had no chance of defending the choke. Before that he had a really good quick win over Tim Elliott. Before that he looked really good at striking Herrera for 3 rounds. His striking is really crisp, and he's pretty powerful for a flyweight fighter as well. So Ben's going to want to keep this on the feet. Wilson Hayes' striking has improved, but his got 0 KO wins in his career, so there's not really a threat of a knockout. But will Ben be hesitant with fearfulness of the takedown? I think he was a bit hesitant in his last fight against Formiga on the feet. I don't think he really let his hands and feet go like he normally does because he was worried about the takedown, and I can see that being a case here as well. So this is a tough one to call. If Ben keeps it on the feet, he wins the fight. If Hayes can keep getting takedowns, he can win a decision or submit Ben. So it's a tough one to call. Wilson last submitted someone, Hector Sandoval, who I think took that fight on really short notice, but besides that you're going back to the Scott Jorgensen fight, and that was a fight where they clashed heads and Jorgensen went down, so it was quite controversial. So otherwise we're going back to pre-UFC days for a submission win against Owen Roddy 6 years ago. Ben has been submitted before, but one of the submission losses was his debut in MMA. The other one was his last fight where he was just out of it from the spinning back fist. So his submission defence is okay. It's his chin that's more of a liability for me, but that shouldn't factor here. He has had some bad knockout losses. I mean, you could kind of say the Formiga loss was a KO loss because he was ultimately submitted from being knocked senseless on the feet. Louis Smolka absolutely battered him. Real brutal beatdown he suffered there. But in this fight, I think I have to side with Ben. I think he can do enough on the feet. I think Hayes is maybe starting to fade. I think if it does hit the ground, I think Ben can survive, but he really does just need to let his hands and feet go. I know it's tough when you're worried about the takedown, but he's just got to fight natural here, and I think if he does, he will win this fight, and I think he can knock Wilson Hayes out. Wilson has been stopped a few times with strikes, and Ben is a very powerful striker, so I'm going to go with a Ben KO victory here. Next, Yushin Okami from Japan versus Alexei Kunchenko. This was a hard fight for me to cap purely because I tried to review Kunchenko's more recent M1 fights and they've all been taken off MMA Core. I think this is due to the affiliation that they now have with the UFC, but I can't find them on Fight Pass either, so it's a really difficult fight for me to call because I can find no evidence of Kunchenko's takedown defense. In his UFC debut against Thiago Alves, it was a striking affair. He didn't need to show any takedown defense, so it's a really hard fight for me to call. Yushin is going to want to take him down. He's very strong at welterweight, very big, but he is getting old now. He's 37 years of age. He's had approaching 50 fights. He has been knocked out 5 times before. Kunchenko is 34, but mileage a lot younger. Only had 19 fights. He's won every single one of them fights. It looks okay against Thiago. I didn't think it was a great performance, but maybe he was playing it safe where it was his UFC debut. He won a decision that was fairly competitive, but as I said, this is going to come down to whether Yushin can take Kunchenko down, and I've literally got no evidence of his takedown defense. I'm going to say Kunchenko will knock him out just based on his body of work over in Russia. He's beaten some good fighters over there. He's got power. Okami, as I said, has been stopped multiple times. He's getting up there in age. It's a big weight cut for him as well, so that can't help his chin. So I do like Kunchenko to knock him out, but if Okami can get the takedowns going, he could grind out a decision here. But I'm going to go Kunchenko, but it's not the most informed decision, purely based on there being no tape available for me to review Kunchenko's takedown defense. But I will take Kunchenko by knockout. Paul the Bear Jew Craig versus Jim Krute. Paul Craig, man, he fucked me over big time in his last fight. I bet on Ankalev. I had him in a parlay. Thought it was money in the bag. Last second, bam, triangle. The worst loss of my betting career ever. Absolute sickener. Paul is a dangerous guy on the mat. There's, he gets a lot of stick, but he is as dangerous as they come on the mat. You watch his pre-UFC fights, snatched up lovely submissions on Cole Moore and Lazarez. Nice triangle choke. Came into the UFC, lovely armbar on Enrique da Silva, and then what a
what a come from behind victory against Ankalev. Snatched up that triangle, sunk it in. It seemed like a quick tap, but nonetheless he tapped. So Paul Craig is very dangerous on the mat. He lacks stand up though. He does have a bit of a tall man defence. I don't think his chin's the best. Tyson Pedro put him down, actually knocked him out with elbows on the floor, but he did drop him as well from standing. Khalil Rountree completely shut his lights out. So Paul Craig is a bit of a sub or bust kind of fighter. He needs this fight, or any fight really, on the mat where he is very dangerous and very crafty with his submissions. His stand up and chin not the best. Jim Krute, Australian prospect, fought on the Contender Series. Looks like a solid fighter. He is young. He's only 22. So can he keep his composure fighting under the bright lights in his home country? Needs to be very careful if this fight touches the mat. I have to side with Krute just because I do think Craig is a sub or bust kind of fighter. In modern MMA, it's very difficult to notch submissions in the higher weight classes, especially at light heavyweight. And I know Craig's pulled out a couple of good ones, Henrique da Silva, Ankalev. I can't see how that can keep going on the UFC level. I mean, it remains to be seen how good Jim Krute is, whether he is UFC level himself. So there is the chance that he could be submitted here. But on the feet, this is Jim Krute's fight. It will be interesting if it hits the mat. Paul Craig did get Ankalev down a couple of times, so is Craig improving? Can he get Krute down? I've just got to go with the younger, more well-rounded fighter versus the guy who has a lot of holes but is very dangerous in one particular area, which is his submission game, particularly off of his back, which again, it's in any weight division in modern MMA, it's very hard to snatch up submissions off your back, especially at the heavier weight classes. I just can't trust a guy who probably needs a submission off of his back to win a fight. So I'm gonna go with Jim Krute, the guy making his UFC debut, fighting in his backyard. Paul Craig is going to be up against it here, but we have seen him put it out the bag before, so you can't write the guy off. I think the betting line maybe could be a little bit tighter, just based on it being Krute's UFC debut and how crafty Craig is. But yeah, I'm going to go with Jim Krute to get the victory in his backyard here, probably via a stoppage in round 2 or 3. Suman Mokhtarian fighting out of Australia, facing Sadiq Yusuff. Sadiq looks a very, very talented, useful prospect. Suman coming in with an 8-0 record. He has fought nobody of note. I don't recognise any names on the record. Most of them were making a debut, don't even have a registered record. There's one guy he beat who was 5-2 at the time, Sam Chan, that he actually beat with a twister. Very unique submission. I think we've only seen one twister submission in the UFC. The guy had also fought Cora France, who we're seeing on this show as well, and lost in the first round to him. So the guy doesn't look great with the 5-2 record, but it's the only guy with a winning record that he's actually faced. So it's hard to get a handle. I mean, he's clearly fairly talented on the floor if he's pulling off twister victories in a MMA fight. It's hard to get a full handle on him. There's not a great deal of tape available. Submission game looks fairly useful, but Sadiq Yusuff looks like a very, very solid talent. He comes out of the Lloyd Irving camp. His fight on the Dana White Contender Series was a real excellent high-level fight. He showed excellent striking, happy trading in the pocket, real tight punches, very nasty calf kicks, absolutely ruined Mike Davis's calf with the calf kicks. He beat an SBG fighter fight before, Dylan Tuck. Maybe it was a premature stoppage, but dropped him. Followed up with some punches. Referee stepped in. He did have a loss on Titan that was a little worrying. Louis Gomez actually dropped him on the feet, and he went for a Ippon Cianagi throw, and Yusuff fell flat on his face and it knocked him out basically. So I do have some reservations with regards to his chin, I've got to say, but then he did kind of dispel them somewhat against Mike Davis on the Contender Series, where he did eat some big shots. So the jury is still out, still a little bit nervous out. I don't think Simmons the kind of guy that's going to come in and jeopardise his chin. I think from the tape you can see, Mkhitaryan seems like he's more of a grappler, wants his fight on the floor. But that fight aside, Yusuff looks like a real great talent. I watched his other fight on Titan as well, where he won a decision over, let me see who it was, over Chucker Willis, who was 8-3 going into that fight. Sadiq was only 3-0, so fighting an 11-fight veteran there. It wasn't a great performance. He basically held him against the cage a lot, but he fought very composed, which I liked. Very smart. Took Willis out of his comfort zone. Won an easy decision. Then he got a quick knockout in his next fight. Then he had that loss to Louis Gomez, where I said the chin issue does rear its head. Then a quick win over Dylan Tuck, and then really emphatic decision win over Mike Davis. This guy's clearly got power for 145. Real talented. I've seen him taken down a couple of times, but really good get-ups, straight back to his feet. I think the sky's the limit for this guy. I really think he could be a real emerging talent. So it's going to be interesting how he deals with going over to Australia, fighting someone in their backyard. Crafty grappler, but I do expect Yusuff to get this victory and to get this guy out of here. I think he's going to secure a knockout. He really has power in his hands. But moving forward, the chin is a bit of a worry for me. So I have to keep an eye on that moving forward. But I do expect a pretty comfortable victory for Sadiq here, albeit Mkhitaryan, there isn't a great deal of tape. So as good as Yusuff looks, I definitely couldn't bet him big, just because I don't have a full handle on Mkhitaryan's game and how good he actually is or isn't. But Sadiq, looking like the emerging talent, I've definitely got to go with him for a knockout victory here. Jake Matthews versus Tony Martin, or as he's now known, Anthony Rocco Martin. This is really good matchmaking, really good fight. This is a fight that I actually haven't got round to doing tape on yet, but I'm fairly familiar with both guys. Jake began his career in the UFC at 155. He's actually moved up to 170, and it suits him so much better. His frame looks enormous at 170. I've got no idea how he used to make 155. He's really looked good at welterweight so far. He had the win over Bojan, which wasn't a great performance. Bit of a wrestling heavy affair. Yeah, there was still a lot of question marks after that fight. But then against Xinglang Li, he looked really good. Looked like a completely different fighter. Came out aggressive, like he really wanted it. I know there'd been question marks with regards to how much Matthews wanted it. Was he kind of living his dad's dream? But against Lee, really wanted it. Showed real fighting spirit. Put Lee down a couple of times. Really dominating victory. Very impressive. And then he had a bit of a shoe-in fight against Shinsho Anzai, but he done what he was supposed to have done. He went in there, got the job done in round 1. Submission victory. He definitely looks better at 170. Much more suited to the weight class. So it's going to be interesting now to see him against someone like Tony Martin, who is a very solid fighter. Similar to Jake in the sense that he was at 155 as well. Now he's moved up to 170. Tony used to gas, and a lot of that was attributed to the cut he was making to make 155. He's now had 2 fights at 170, and he's looked really good at 170 as well. He's got the win over Nakamura, outstruck Nakamura. Then he got the win over Ryan LaFleur, which is a fight I still haven't seen. I've seen the finish, but I haven't actually seen the whole fight. But Ryan LaFleur, who has subsequently retired, is a solid fighter and a big strong 170. So definitely looks like welterweight suits both men better. Tony Martin's striking has improved a lot. I remember the Johnny Case fight. He outstruck Johnny Case, used a really good jab. So on the feet, you've got more of a technician in Tony Martin with a nice long jab. Jake is more of a kind of barrel forward and try and throw big, looping, powerful hooks. So I think Tony should win this when it's on the feet. I definitely favour him on the feet. It's definitely more technical. So it's going to be interesting to see if this fight does hit the floor, what happens on the floor. Tony can be taken down. Takedown defence isn't the greatest. Nakamura managed to take him down on the occasions that he did actually try to take him down. As I said earlier, it was dodgy fight IQ for me in that fight from Nakamura. But yeah, Tony's takedown defence is at 55%, so he can be taken down. I imagine Jake is gonna stand with him. I don't think he's going to be too worried about Tony knocking him out, but I think he will want to get this fight to the mat. His takedown accuracy is 41%. Anything in the 40% range or above is pretty good. So we could see him going for takedowns here. Like I said, I'm not on tape, so it's a hard fight for me to call, but I'm going to go with Tony Martin here. I think he is better on the feet. He's a very solid grappler. Definitely looks better at welterweight, as Jake does. He is fighting in Jake's backyard, so Jake is really, really going to be up for this fight. They've both got the same reach. Tony's an inch taller, so yeah, this is a real good matchmaking. I'm really looking forward to this fight to see where both guys are at. But I do fancy Tony to pull out a decision here. I think he can do enough on the feet. He's gonna have to make Jake work for them takedowns and not accept being on the bottom. But I think he ekes out a decision. I think it's going to be a very close fight though. But I will side with Tony Martin to win a decision here based on the work he does on the feet versus what Jake can get done on the floor. So Tony Martin decision for me. Mark the Super Samoan Hunt versus Justin Willis. So two big heavyweights here going at it. Willis has a 6-inch reach advantage on the feet here, so that's something that could play a big part in this fight. Mark Hunt coming off a loss to Alexei Olinek. Before that he lost to Curtis Blades. He did have Blades in big trouble at one point in that fight though. Before that he beat Derek Lewis, real comfortable victory for him there. Before that, nasty knockout loss to Alistair Overeem. I think Mark Hunt's durability is definitely in question now. He used to have that granite chin, but the guy is 44 years of age. He's 45 in March. You know, he's getting on there. He's had a lot of fights. He's had some tough KO losses, and this is without even going back to his K1 career. So the end is definitely nigh for Mark Hunt, I feel. But he has that superpower on the feet, real solid stand up. Justin Willis didn't impress me too much in his last fight against Chase Sherman, but I don't know if that was inexperience. He put Sherman down in the first round. He kind of blew his wad going for the finish, so that might be just inexperience. He needs to definitely stay more composed in there against Mark Hunt, because even though I'm questioning his durability, he is still famous for that, so it's probably not going to be a one punch and done win here. So if he does hurt Mark, he's got to stay composed. He doesn't want to gas out against Mark. Willis can use takedowns. He did use them in his UFC debut against James Mulheron, but Mark Hunt's got such a low centre of gravity, he is pretty tough to take down. And is Willis going to be prepared to kind of go into that grinding wrestling affair with the big boned heavy Mark Hunt and potentially threaten his own cardio by doing so? I don't know. His game plan's going to be interesting here, but I'm going to side with Justin Willis just purely because he's the fresher fighter. He's only had professionally 8 fights. He's got nowhere near the mileage and damage on him that Mark Hunt has. He's got that big 6-inch reach advantage. He does have power. Mark Hunt, you can't rule him out. It wouldn't surprise me if he knocked Willis out. He is fighting in Australia, so close to home. He's going to be motivated. I believe it's the last fight on his UFC contract as well. But it's just, he's so old now, and he's had so many stoppage losses, whether it's KO or submission now, that I'm going to have to go with the younger, fresher guy, even though the jury is out for Justin Willis. For me personally, as I said, you look at his UFC run and he's fought no one. James Mulholland, Alan Crowder, Chase Sherman. Chase Sherman took the third round off of him. So I don't feel great about picking Willis here, but I'm just fading Mark Hunt. It's not a fight I'm comfortable betting on. I tend to avoid betting on heavyweight fights just purely because it's one punch and the fight can be over. And there's a lot of question marks here regarding Willis. Can he make the step up? Mark Hunt, has he got anything left? So interesting fight. Mark Hunt, probably his last fight in the UFC, but I do fancy Justin Willis to pull this off here. But I would not be surprised one bit if Mark Hunt comes out and puts Justin away. So I'm looking forward to it. Last time we're going to see Mark Hunt, I'm sure, in the UFC. He's going to want to put on a show, being near to home. He's going to come out firing his guns, but I'm going to go with big pretty Justin Willis to win this one. But it's going to be entertaining while it lasts, I guarantee you that. There's definitely a theme running with these last three fights. Mark Hunt, Shogun and JDS, three fighters that we've all got big question marks on now with regards to it being, is it the end of their careers, how's their durability. So next fight, Mauricio Shogun Hua versus Tyson Pedro. Shogun is a shell of the fighter he was, 37 years of age now. He's had a rough road recently. He suffered a brutal knockout against Anthony Smith back in July, so 4 months ago. Don't really like that he's coming back. Is it 4 or 5 months? I still don't like that he's coming back that soon, because that was a really, really nasty loss he had there. Now he's facing Tyson Pedro over in Australia. Shogun put together a nice little run. He beat Lil Nog, he beat Corey Anderson, he beat Valenti, but none of them fights were overly impressive performance-wise. His chin is definitely a liability now. Tyson Pedro, there's question marks for me, much like Willis on Pedro. I don't think Pedro is the finished article yet. He's still early in his MMA career. He's only had 9 fights. He's had 4 fights in the UFC. He wrecked Paul Craig. Well, actually, the Safarov fight was fairly competitive until he pulled out a real nice submission. And then OSP dropped, but then got armbarred. And Latifi gassed out against Latifi. So, there's question marks on Tyson Pedro here for me about how good he is, how good he's going to be. But he is he beat Roundtree as well. He got dropped in that fight and came back to it. Roundtree down, hit a rear naked choke. He's a massive favourite. He's minus 460, which there's no way I can touch Tyson Pedro at that price, even against the faded Shogun. What is Shogun's strategy going to be? Is he going to try and grapple here? Is he happy to stand? Is he going to be tentative as he knows his chin's shot? You've got to go with Tyson Pedro. He's the younger, fresher fighter. Mauricio is a shell of himself. But at the price he is, there's no way I would touch it. But unfortunately, I expect the legend to be put down again here, and Tyson Pedro to come away with a victory. But I've still got question marks on Tyson Pedro. When he does receive a better opponent, I will definitely be looking to possibly fade him, because he does get a lot of hype, Pedro. But on the other hand, he's young, he's training with a good camp. I think he's with the Tiger Muay Thai camp, which Mark Hunt and Tai Tuivasa train at, so he could be making big strides from fight to fight. And he did drop OSP, so he's got power in his hands, because OSP is tough. I just see him catching Shogun and putting him down. But wouldn't be shocked if Shogun knocked him out, but I just can't see it at this stage of his career. I've got to go with Tyson Pedro. I don't think he'd have much joy getting Shogun down to the mat, and even if he did, I don't think he'd have much joy on the mat with regards to a finishing threat. So I can see him keeping this standing, and I just think he's going to catch Shogun with something, and I definitely don't like Shogun coming back relatively quickly after that brutal loss to Anthony Smith. So I'm going to go with Tyson Pedro, but it's not a fight that, with the way the line is, I definitely can't bet it. What's inside the distance? Let's see. So for Pedro inside the distance, -230, and that's crap as well. So yeah, it's a pass for me, but on the betting angle. But I definitely favour Pedro just based on him being the younger, fresher fighter. Main event for the evening is Junior Dos Santos against Tai Tuivasa. Heavyweight fight, as you probably starting to gather from there. Heavyweight fights are not my favourite fights for betting one bit. So let's have a look at this fight in more detail. So Junior Dos Santos, what a fighter he was. Again, we're touching on the what does he have left, durability kind of question marks. A lot of questions were raised with him post USADA as well. You know, he physically looked a bit different. Was he the same fighter post USADA? Couple that with the absolute brutal losses he had to Cain Velasquez over 10 rounds in total. They definitely took something out of him. They would take something out of anyone. They were brutal fights. He's been knocked out by Alistair Overeem since then, and Stipe Miocic as well. Has a bad habit of backing into the fence, JDS, and as I touched on yesterday with regards to the main event, where RDA, 34 years of age, same as JDS, I just can't see him changing his game enough in a small space of time at that age to really have the footwork to avoid backing into the fence. And JDS the same. It's just, you know, Tai Tuivasa's going to bring some pressure. Is he going to catch him on the fence? That is the big question mark here. If JDS can put in a performance like he did against Ben Rothwell, where he just stayed on the outside, peppered away, he's got a 2-inch reach advantage. Kind of done the same against Ivanov, but I'm kind of fading all the old men and their durability issues here. But I don't know. I think I'm going to go Tai Tuivasa. There's question marks over Tai. You go back a couple of years ago, he had an awful fight with James McSweeney, but these young guys make such big improvements. You go and watch the Andrei Arlovski fight, you wouldn't think it's the same fighter. He's obviously improved a lot. He's training with Mark Hunt, he's training with Tyson Pedro. I think they're doing their camps at Tiger. He is obviously improving. The Arlovski fight was very close. It was a close fight. So how good is Tai Tuivasa? What is his ceiling? You go back a couple of years, you'd pick Junior Dos Santos all day here, but is Junior Dos Santos the same fighter? I don't think he is. In fact, he definitely isn't. Can he beat Tai Tuivasa? Of course he can. He can fight from range, keep circling, keep away from the power. Tai has big power. He took out Rashad Coulter. I know Rashad's not very good, but he took him out. Cyril Asker, I know he's not great, took him out. Arlovski, competitive fight with Arlovski, but to face someone like Arlovski early in your career, go 3 rounds with him, that's a great learning curve. Now he's got a 5-rounder main event in Australia, a lot of pressure on his shoulders, but I'm going to go with Tai. It's a tough one for me to call. I don't like predicting heavyweight fights because one shot and it can change everything. If this goes 5 rounds, JDS wins this fight. I'm pretty sure, but I just think Tai is going to catch him with something. I can see JDS backing into the fence. I can see Tai unloading, and I can see JDS going down. But I would not be shocked if JDS pulls this off. If it goes past the first couple of rounds, I would definitely have my eye on JDS decision on live betting. That would definitely be a live bet to put on, because I do think the longer it goes, the more it favours Junior. So Tai is going to have to probably get rid of JDS within the first couple of rounds, and I think he can. But I am taking a bit of a leap of faith in Ty, and I'm fading JDS a bit as well here with this prediction. Ty fought Orlovsky back in June, so it's nearly 6 months ago. Someone at his age, they can make significant improvements in 6 months, especially training at a high caliber camp. So he could come in looking even better here. He seems to be improving fight to fight, and we've seen the best of Junior. You're not going to see anything we haven't seen from him. Is that good enough to get him the victory here? Quite possibly, but I'm going to go with the young emerging talent, and third fight in a row I'm going to fade the old lion and go with the emerging talent. So yeah, that's my prediction. I'm going to go Ty by a knockout. That covers all of the fights for this card. Just to give you a reminder, you can find me on Twitter at Pro MMA Betting. You can also visit our website www.prommmabetting.com. We are the world's highest stakes tipster for MMA and boxing. We post our bet slips on Twitter as well, so you can see the large stakes that we are risking. Anything we recommend to you guys, we bet as well, and we post those bet slips to show you we are risking our money along with providing you with those tips. We won't give you a tip unless we truly believe in it and are going to bet it ourselves. So good luck for this week, everyone, and we'll be back next week for UFC 231.